Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now to the front pages, and I'll take you through some of today's papers. The Sunday Times has this picture of the Queen with her jewels, and it says the Queen's jeweller pays no tax. That's their allegation there. And a terror witness, you might remember that phrase from the Leytonstone attack, "You ain't no Muslim, bruv, nor am I." The man dubbed a hero says he now fears retribution from ISIS. That's in the Times. The jihadis must get the hell out of Britain is the story for the Mail that you just heard there in the news. A world exclusive by the Mail on Sunday. The story of Shaker Aamer, who spent 14 years in Guantanamo Bay, tortured, he says, in the presence of British intelligence. The Sunday Telegraph has a very new look. Michelle Doherty from Downton Abbey, here in a US television drama as a thief whose life becomes entwined with a hitman. And their story is Cameron's climb down on EU benefits, what they're calling a climb down. The Tories warn that the Prime Minister is 1,000 miles from an acceptable deal. One more, The Observer, a major leap for mankind. It reflects on that deal coming out of Paris. Historic deal, nearly 200 countries signing up to climate change efforts there. Well, with me to review the papers in a bit more depth, Shami, Colleen and Andrew. Warm welcome to you all. And Colleen, start us off. You're going to take us through the nitty-gritty of Paris.
Well, the headlines are fantastic. Major leap for mankind, climate deal. But, of course, the devil is in the detail. First, it needs to be ratified. You need 55% of the greenhouse gas emitting countries to sign up to it. And secondly, it needs to be implemented. And so we've seen this before, for example, the Kyoto Protocol, where everyone had these fantastic emission requirements and targets, but they were targets and timetables that were sort of set through political horse trading. So the question is, how will that get implemented? They're talking about $100 billion to help countries. That's a lot of money. And it was one of the sticking issues for the United States because they wanted legally binding financial commitments. And of course, the U.S. can't do that. It's passed by Congress. And then the other is China and India don't want to commit to it. They have a concept of common but differentiated responsibility where they want everyone else to cut and they don't cut. But as we heard, China is the biggest emitter.
And Andrew, when we're talking now about the action plan and nearly 200 signatories to it, does it make you think actually the argument about scepticism towards climate change is now gone, that people have broadly moved towards saying, yes, this is happening and we're doing something?
I think there's always going to be a healthy dose of scepticism, of course there will. And the proof of this will be in the eating, because of course a lot of this is not legally binding, and therefore will there really be any major difference? Are India and China really going to reform the ways they trade? I'm not so sure. But there are still a number of sceptics who don't believe in climate change, global warming, one of whom is very prominent, Jeremy Corbyn's brother, Piers Corbyn, who I saw making a very eloquent case on the BBC only the other day about why the whole thing is a fiction.
Shami, talk us through the spread that you've got on the Shaker Aamer on the Sunday Mail.
I really do have to pay tribute to the Mail on Sunday today, because my recollection is that no paper has been so consistent in campaigning for the closure of Guantanamo and indeed for Shaker Aamer's release. And you'll know that he was the last British resident in Guantanamo, and he's only recently come home. A wonderful spread today. Ultimately very positive, because you see this man who's been illegally interned in Guantanamo for 14 years, but nonetheless, he doesn't seem bitter. He denounces terrorism. He makes the comments that you quoted about jihadis in Britain, and is clearly, you know, a man of peace. However, there are some pretty serious allegations that that MI5 and indeed people who served in Mr. Blair's government have to answer. And I guess we can look forward to hearing those answers in the weeks ahead.
The allegations that British intelligence were in the room when he was being...
So he talks about his torture, which includes things like having his head smashed against a wall during interrogations, and he talks about one agent in particular who called himself John, who said he was from MI5, who had a smart English accent. The Mail on Sunday traces this incident back to a time when agents flew to Bagram with Mr. Blair.
Colleen, you were in the Bush administration at the time. When you read the details that are coming out now from this account, where are you?
Well, I think we have to remember that this was 2002, which was right after 2001, after the 9/11. I actually went down to Guantanamo twice, once with the head of the Belgian prisons and also with the UK Foreign Affairs Committee. And what you see at Guantanamo is completely different from what his story is about, which was when he was held in Bagram, which ironically was one of the reasons they set up Guantanamo, because they felt that Bagram, there wasn't the conditions to be able to hold people properly. So it's sort of, I think we have to put that into context of, think of Paris, like right after Paris. Right now, you have the emergency situation.
You don't doubt, though, he's telling the truth about this torture. And
we don't know. We don't know, because one of the trainings for Guantanamo detainees, for any jihadist, is to lie that you're being held in conditions.
But what is beyond doubt is this man was held without trial, without being told what he was supposed to have done for 14 years. It is a stain on America.
Remember,
it's a stain on
you're
America.
using a criminal paradigm for what is laws of war, and that's where, as Shami will know,
it sounds like you're saying that that could happen again, that the American administration might turn to this kind of means.
No, absolutely wrong. You shouldn't do torture. It's illegal. We've signed conventions on it.
What about internment without charge or trial for 14 years? You can't possibly think that this has been helpful to America's cause.
Individuals have been held in this country and other countries, not under, they have committed a crime and therefore we're holding them in prison. In the Falklands, you didn't have individuals asking for their lawyer and being brought to the Old Bailey to stand trial.
But is it right?
So, well, that's what we have to figure out with this new situation.
Well, it isn't.
It's not a criminal situation, but it's, look at Hollande, he said, we're at war.
But Obama,
this is a war.
Obama said
and in a war,
running
you
for
hold
first,
individuals.
Obama said when he was running for first term, he would close down the shameful place that is Guantanamo Bay. It's still open, and people are still being held there without knowing what they're supposed to do.
In my view, it has recruited, it's probably recruited more terrorists than it's ever prevented.
We're going to come back to this story with Alex Salmond in a moment. But Andrew, if you just take us on to Cameron's migrant benefit, they're calling it a capitulation in the Independent.
They are. Well, it's in a few papers too. Europe is the issue which has bedevilled every Conservative Party leader since Margaret Thatcher. It now looks like the big plus that Cameron thought he'd shot the UKIP fox when he said there would be a referendum on our membership of the EU. It would be our first national referendum since 1975. In their own manifesto, the Tories said the minimum requirement of a renegotiation was to withhold in-work benefits for EU migrants for the first 4 years. Even his allies, the Poles, said no to that this week. He's gone all around Europe, running up air miles, and he's got no support for it. And he's going to a dinner in Brussels on Thursday. And frankly, he's going into the negotiations like the emperor with no clothes. Number 10 say it's still on the table.
Yeah.
They are not going to be able to deliver it. And Eurosceptics...
They're resisting this very firmly, saying it's simply not true that he's giving up on it.
Well, he's got no support for it. And what's very interesting, in the Sunday Times, quoted on the front page, Dominic Cummings, a former aide to Michael Gove, who we know is a real Eurosceptic, that's the Justice Secretary. He's now a big part of the Let's Get Out of the EU campaign. He said the Prime Minister sought trivia. That was all he was seeking, and he hasn't even got that.
Kelly, take us on to what's possibly been the story of the week, or the long-running story of the week, those Trump comments, and what seems to have happened now. Islamophobia still fueling his success in the polls.
Every time he says something, his attack on war hero John McCain, we all think this will be it. I mean, he comes out against, puppies. He could say anything, and they will still support him. And I think part of it is a media situation, because he's a household name in America. So when you're doing polling and you call people up, there's 14 individuals running for president of the Republican side. How many can name them? So they say, well, who do you like? And they go, Trump. He's on The Apprentice, he's known. I mean, he's the first name you remember. And then he's up in the polls, and because he's up in the polls, he gets media attention. And because he gets media attention, it's sort of the Kim Kardashianization of American politics.
But how worried do we need to be, Colleen?
Yes.
Can such a divisive candidate actually win the presidency?
Well, what you need to look at is, does he have a ground game? Meaning, does he actually have people out there that are ready to get out the vote? He doesn't have a lot of money there. He doesn't need a lot of money because he's getting all of this free press.
The question, so politicians have been very quick to refute what he said and to talk about him as crazy, and yet, is he speaking to people's fears in America post San Bernardino? This is really, you know, what's at the heart of what you're asking now. Maybe he is appealing because he's saying something.
It reminds me of Nigel Farage, where Farage was speaking to concerns that people felt the politicians weren't addressing. But when it came to actual elections, they didn't end up turning out for him as everyone had predicted. So that's the thinking on Trump, is he is expressing things that individuals think politicians are afraid to address for political correctness. He's out there being bold and sounding decisive, but getting out the vote will be another thing.
Shami, I want to call this a major leap forward for Saudi women. It's probably too dramatic to go that far, but quite a turning point when they've actually been given a vote.
Well, Saudi women get to have been able to vote in some local elections, but nonetheless, it's 2015, and finally, some Saudi women got to vote. Big PR coup for the taxi company Uber, because they, of course, women can't drive in Saudi Arabia, so they provided free lifts to the polling stations. But it is a small step. Because it's just local elections. Women were able to stand as candidates, but of course not to campaign openly, not to be in the company of men.
A man.
Exactly. So yes, it's a moving moment, but it's goodness me, it's not anywhere near enough.
It's a baby step.
Yeah.
Hopefully, just getting the right to drive would be nice.
That would be good, wouldn't it?
I thought all men should wear wigs. So that then
like
they'd have
Donald
to be
Trump.
stopping No, not like Donald Trump.
No, he's got real
but I mean
hair.
long,
It's
long,
real. I felt it. I've been
hair.
invited to pull his hair. And there you go, your fact for the morning.
Is it really his?
It really is,
Oh, right.
all the way. I mean, that was as
Okay.
close
Do we
I
have
wanted
that
to
on
get
video,
there.
you pulling his hair?
I think you probably do somewhere.
That's going to go viral.
Andrew, talk to us about this move by anti-Corbyn, who his critics are calling a move to get moderates, not as on the left as Corbyn, into this party under the sort of widening of the membership rules. What's all that about?
This is a story in the Telegraph. Corbyn, we know, was elected on a huge wave of popular support in the Labour Party. Lots of people signed up for £3 and as associate members. So if there was a leadership contest, just say in a couple of months' time, he'd probably win with a bigger majority because he's more popular than ever with Labour Party members. So what the moderates are suggesting, they're saying that actually we need to get 100,000 people who are more of the centre of the Labour Party, so that at some point, when there is a leadership challenge, they've got ammunition. Doesn't say, though, which leader potentially they're going to rally behind. I think you need to have a leader.
Or whether the moderates are all
Are they
queuing up to
there?
come in.
Because some of them might want to go to another party.
This
but
language is very loaded, though, isn't it? Who is a moderate? Who is the centre? You know,
some of the people who feel they're going to be deselected by Jeremy Corbyn would say they're the moderates. People like Tristram Hunt, the shadow who was shadow education secretary. Michael Doogar is quoted. Oh no, that's in another story. But I suspect it's a bold attempt. But 100,000, it's a lot.
Very clever.
Let's finish on a sparkling moment from you, Colleen. We don't know what to call our champagne, do we?
Just go with it, champagne. But it's wonderful that there is now the idea of champagne being grown in Britain, particularly in England. Tattinger takes the headlines here, but Nye Timber is a well-known brand, and that actually was started by two gentlemen from California that came over and said, the soil here, you share the continental shelf. It's the same soil as in France. Why not grow it here?
I've drank it. It's very nice champagne.
This is disgraceful.
But
you are just touting to have someone send you a case of this stuff before Christmas.
Well,
I know what you're up to.
Don't try the green room. I
Colleen
think you might be
Graffy.
disappointed after this.
But I love it because we drink so much of it here. It's like, we should be dominating the market. Why not?
Thank you all very much indeed. Thanks for coming in. We're going to return now to the story on Shaker Aamer, released, as you heard, from Guantanamo Bay last month after 14 years. Today he gave an exclusive interview to the Mail on Sunday where he claimed British officials had been present in the room whilst he'd been tortured. Well, we're joined now from Aberdeen by Alex Salmond, the former First Minister and the SNP's Foreign Affairs spokesman. Thanks for joining us, Alex Salmond. What do you make of what you've heard or what you've read today?
Well, the first thing to say about the piece in the Mail in Sunday by David Rose, a very well-written piece, as you'd expect, incidentally, is that this man seems to have emerged from 5,000 days of illegal captivity with both sane and with a remarkable generosity of spirit. It's an extraordinary piece to read. But of course, the real politics of this is what you point to, and that's the allegation that in January 2002, British officials, intelligence officers, witnessed not his abduction, which we knew about, but his torture. And also, as a point of detail, that they came into Bagram Air Base on the same flight as the then Prime Minister, Tony Blair. And so the not unreasonable allegation that Shaker Aamer makes is that both the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, and the then Home Secretary, Jack Straw, must have known not just about his illegal abduction, but also about his torture at the hands of the US authorities.
Does this change anything? What would you want to see happen?
Well, I think obviously, as in so many things, Messrs Blair and Straw have a great deal to answer for, and they have to be asked the straight question: how could they possibly not have known about the fate that had befallen a British citizen? I mean, the governments have many responsibilities, but the prime responsibility of all governments is to keep their own citizens safe from harm, and governments are not meant to collaborate on the illegal abduction and then the torture of one of our own citizens. So both the then Prime Minister and Home Secretary have to face up and tell us exactly what they knew and when they knew it.
As you said, these are allegations at the moment. Extraordinarily humane interview that he's given. But do you believe what you're reading is true?
Well, I can only go, obviously I've not spoken to Shaker Aamer myself, I can only go on what I've read in the David Rose interview, but I doubt if anyone reading that comprehensive interview and what he says about other things and the detail which he goes into would doubt the veracity of his comments. Apart from anything else, few, if anybody, maybe with the exception of one of the guests in your programme today, would doubt that this man was held illegally and improperly over a period of 14 years and was held in detention at Guantanamo Bay long after everyone knew he had no connection with terrorism whatsoever. And one of the suspicions that those campaigning for his release have had is there had to be a reason for him not being released, despite being cleared for release twice over that period. That has always been centred on the revelations he would have about what was going on in Guantanamo Bay. It now appears that a reason might have been of what had gone on in January 2002 at Bagram Air Base.
Alex Salmond, thank you. Thank you for joining us.